Today I'm talking about one of my favorite video games, Pathologic 2. There's so much to unpack, so much to discuss. I think I liked this better than The Void, but not for the same reasons. As discussed in my video about The Void, this, in many video games, can transcend mindless entertainment and become art. Art is subjective, and it's wonderful that we can all come away with something different. If you've never played Pathologic 2, it's very layered, very ambiguous, and that's intentional by design. It'd be easy to make an argument for almost any metaphor. But the game is also, at times, very meta, and for brief moments you can see the creator, Nikolai, behind the curtain. So I began thinking, not about what the game meant to me, but what does it mean to Nikolai? I had a hard time organizing my thoughts for this, and it'll be even harder expressing them. In order for me to guide you through what I believe Pathologic 2 is really about, I need to highlight certain information about the game, about Nikolai, and how it all comes together. Not all of this will make sense right away, not until I tie it all together, so I ask your patience, much like the game does itself. The farther I got in this script, the more I felt I truly understood the game, or perhaps Nikolai himself. It's all about circles, always arriving back at the beginning, all the while time keeps ticking. In a nutshell, Pathologic 2 is the story of a surgeon, Artemy, returning to his hometown. His hometown was built as a utopia, an idyllic town with trusting neighbors and fantastic achievements. However, Artemy returns to find this utopia crumbling. The town just suffered their first 2 murders, and everyone is on edge. Peace is gone, paranoia is rampant, and the game starts this way, by shoving you into this nightmare where people will attack you on sight. And things only get worse with each passing day. Soon a plague erupts, which threatens the entire town and spreads uncontrolled as you frantically search for a cure. I'm not going to go into the plot of the character you play as any further, because it doesn't matter. The game repeatedly tells you this. Artemy doesn't matter. He's not even the main character. The main character is the town. See, we've already needed to step up a layer in scope because the game tells its story in such an interesting fashion. Things happen whether you interact with anyone or not. That's actually a point trying to be made. It's in direct opposition to games in which you drive the story. Pathologic 2 is driving itself, and you're just getting dragged along. So our main character, the town, is described as a body. The streets swerve and connect in such an illogical fashion that it's infuriating. But to the designer of the town, both in the game and in real life, it needed to be this way to allow citizens to filter through the town like blood cells. The plague, then, is the infection threatening this body, putting its life at risk. So you would think the plague is the antagonist, but it's not. The antagonist is time. When you're playing Pathologic, this becomes abundantly clear. There's not enough time to do what you need to. Quests will have to be forfeited. Those you're trying to save will die because you need to rest, and you walk so damn slow in a maze of a city that you're wrecked with anxiety, stress, and just wishing you had an extra hour or a few more minutes. The plague is scary. It can't be bargained with, it can't be punched away, but as the game reminds us, death is a certainty. It's inevitable. It's the variable of when it happens that is truly terrifying. Time is relentless, always hounding us, always taking from us, and never giving back. The only other bit of crucial information I need to relay is the game's posed conundrum at the end. The town's crowning achievement is this bizarre structure called the polyhedron. It shoots towards the sky, disconnected from the Earth, defying the rules of gravity. In the design documents, it's noted as the greatest possible focusing of the human spirit and the discovery of new capabilities of the soul. It is the town's peak of human ingenuity, imagination, but it comes at a cost. In the game, it is told to us that the plague is because of the polyhedron, that by disconnecting from the Earth, not playing by the rules that govern us, the town is being punished for their hubris. Our choice at the end is thus: destroy the polyhedron and all those tied to it, the children who in their imaginative outlook flock to the polyhedron as their home, and the natives, the kindred, who are weird and unique and need the polyhedron to remain to survive, or destroy it and save the town along with its citizens. So that's what I needed to convey if you've never played Pathologic before. The protagonist is the town, portrayed as this living entity, a body. The antagonist is time, and our ultimate dilemma is to save the uniqueness of the world or progress the town. Nikolai was the son of theater critics. He was well versed in the theater. In fact, he said that if it wasn't for video games, he'd be a theater producer. Nikolai was also passionate about tabletop games. He would play D&D endlessly with his friends, and it was from these combined passions that Nikolai began writing an interactive play, part role-playing game, part actual performance. Nikolai has always been very well read. He has a wealth of knowledge from the arts as well as history, and as he began to enroll his friends to partake as actors in his game, he found it very difficult to convey all these references, all this information that none of his friends were familiar with. He was frustrated that no one could understand his vision in the same way that he did, and in turn his friends became frustrated with the idea as well. Nikolai had continued writing though, and had achieved an enormous amount of world building, enough to bring it to a different medium. He proposed the idea to video game producer Buka Entertainment, using illustrations and an 86-page description. The general director loved it and requested a demo. Nikolai wasn't a game designer though, he had no experience, so he teamed up with a student programmer and they got to work. After 6 months of development and 6 more of eagerly waiting to hear back from the producer, Nikolai was informed the demo was a hit. He got the contract. Nikolai was ecstatic. He was going to see his interactive play come to life. The only issue was that Nikolai and his team were inexperienced. Deadlines were frequently broken, development took twice as long, and the budget ballooned from $68,000 to $212,000. Part of this was due to Nikolai himself, who obsessed over the writing, the one area he knew and controlled. Originally, Pathologic was just going to be walls upon walls of text, with the word count reportedly at 500,000. The team was able to talk him down, hundreds of thousands down, but that didn't stop his obsessiveness, his tendency to suffer for his art. Reportedly, Nikolai dropped acid at least 4 times to spawn new, crazier ideas, but it didn't help. Nikolai lamented that nothing that wasn't already in his head came to him, and stated, "I saw exactly the same hell that I carried in myself." He was, obviously, a perfectionist, and up until the time of the release was still editing dialogue. In an interview from around this time, Nikolai says something very interesting. He says, "I don't think anyone in the studio is aware of what Pathologic is really about. Only I know that." We can use this as proof that Nikolai is definitely expressing something in particular through the game, despite the ambiguity he's so fond of. When Pathologic the original was released, it was a huge turning point for him. It won award after award, and it propelled Nikolai and his team, complete newcomers, to cult status fame. The game was lauded for its unique commentary, complexity, and literary depth, all of which Nikolai envisioned. Riding high off the success of Pathologic, Nikolai began working on his next project, The Void. He became impassioned once again, and it shows. I think it's his best work if taken as is, but others didn't see it that way. Although received well by critics, it did not sell as well as Pathologic, and that, compounded by the rights disputes between publishers who withheld royalties, it left the company in not much better a position. IPL tried again, with Cargo: The Quest for Gravity. Unfortunately, Cargo neared completion during the financial crisis of 2008, and publishers were in a bad way. Many were shutting down. The team, needing to just offload this nearly finished product, sold it to BitComposer, who did no promotion for it and dropped it on Steam for $30. As a result, Cargo made no profit. With 2 commercial failures in a row, IPL needed a hit. They decided to make a game compatible with Android and iOS to increase their profits, and released Knock Knock. The game brought in $850,000 on a $58,000 budget. They now had funds to continue with their usual projects, but the money, considering the state they'd been in, didn't last long. Employees were beginning to question Nikolai. He wouldn't budge on decisions, any decision that altered his vision, even if it might lead to better sales. And more than that, Nikolai was hard to work with. He describes himself as a petty tyrant. If the slightest detail was not to his liking, a project would need to be redone. This put stress on time, resources, and the workers. Some threatened to quit, citing poor leadership. One of the original founders admitted the team was in crisis, and another admitted it was really hard to work with Nikolai. It was at this point that Nikolai, losing faith in himself and his work, decided to return to Pathologic, what he considers his magnum opus. Set on reviving this project, he was introduced to developer Kiwi, who were interested in offering a $2 million deal. Time, though, was again cruel to Nikolai, and when the 2014 market crash happened, Kiwi deemed the investment too risky and backed out. Thankfully, Tiny Build saved the project, and Pathologic 2 was released. Sadly, to little fanfare. The game was another commercial failure. Before the release, the turmoil within the team was already grating on Nikolai. He resented having to rely on others to have his vision come to fruition. When Pathologic came out a failure, it seems he finally had to listen to his team, although reluctantly. IPL was divided, with employees getting to work on their own projects and Nikolai on his alone. He was going to devote himself to learn how to develop a game from start to finish without any help. Nikolai seemed burnt out after Pathologic 2, and how can you blame him? But the resentfulness is still there. To quote Nikolai, "They say that if you remove the crazy Dabowski, things will get better. Well, let's see what they do." Originally, Pathologic 2 was going to be a direct beat-for-beat remake, but along the way, Nikolai realized he couldn't do it. He stated he couldn't release Pathologic as it used to be because it wouldn't be appropriate for the current time. But that sentiment doesn't make sense to me. How is the original story not appropriate for the present? But then you hear him say this: "A lot of time has passed since the original release. The world has changed, and we have changed." So it wasn't the story that was inappropriate, but the message Nikolai was sending. He had grown out of it. Nikolai is the scriptwriter. If the story has changed, that's him changing it. That's the we he's referring to, not the team, but himself. This all points to Pathologic actually being a story about Nikolai, or something he's gone through. I'm going to work from bottom to top in layers to explain the symbolism, so here we go. Of the characters in the town, the adults, the general townspeople, they represent the general audience. In Nikolai's case, the general video game audience. The kindred, the weird unique creatures of the land, they are literally unique pieces of art, which are disliked in the game and in real life by general audiences. The children, they are fans of unique art. The town, the main protagonist, it's Nikolai. The plague, the air of death advancing, it's Nikolai's threat of failure. Our antagonist, Time, the unrelenting villain, well, it's just that. It's being Nikolai's villain from day one in real life trying to get his art made. He's a perfectionist, under constant threat of deadlines and release dates. The whole team at IPL suffer under time constraints. Their crunch times are described as awful, but yet some employees feel they gain something from it, something positive, that through suffering they came out the other side changed, and that's exactly how Pathologic presents itself. The polyhedron, the pinnacle of imagination, it's also just that. It's Nikolai's art, perhaps Pathologic itself, or even the void. He feels as if his art is too cerebral, too disconnected from reality to work in harmony with what the general population wants. In his work, the polyhedron is killing the town, himself, not literally but metaphorically. He's exhausted, he suffers for his work under constant time deadlines, grim conditions, and fear of failure, and yet people don't want it. The games aren't selling, slowly killing his ability to make art. The general audience for his work will not exist if he makes it outside the rules of normal video games, something he doesn't want to compromise on. The townspeople in the game are very hard to please, and they aren't the ones drawn to the polyhedron. The polyhedron is only a place for children who are drawn to creativity, the fans of his work. Nikolai uses this extreme metaphor of a plague. His work is so avoided by the general populace that he sees his fight against failure like fighting a plague. When asked what he would be strategically focusing on in the future, Nikolai stated, "The same thing since 2001, survival. Just keeping the studio running. Continuing to work despite the difficulties is already a huge achievement." His work doesn't fit in with the normal consumer games out there. Whereas other games are playing by the rules, his work isn't. It's defying gravity, and he's being punished for it. You can see this a lot in the Marble's Nest DLC. There's talk about having to play by rules set by others, and how do you escape that? It works as a meta to the game, but also a meta about the video game industry. I think the original Pathologic was trying to say something along those lines, about breaking the rules of the industry and bringing in more uniqueness. But I think this time around, it's much more personal. Nikolai knows he has two choices. One, release a game that plays by the rules and keep the town, the general audience, alive. Or two, stick to his ideas and protect the weird, the unique, but risk failure and perhaps lose his company. Well, Nikolai chose to stick to his ideas, and it came at a cost. He was pressured by his own company to release a difficulty patch, something Nikolai feels robs the game of its essence. When a fellow IPL colleague was questioned about it, they said, "Nikolai often talks about it like this huge, well, not compromise, but as if we really changed the game to fit the zeitgeist." So, Nikolai views it as selling out. There's this one scene. It's of the kindred, asking you to have pity on them, to not let them die, to not remove all the unique things from the world. Nikolai really wants there to be more acceptance of weird art in the world. It's why there's this theme in the game of choosing the past or the future. The past represents his previous work. It's literally what he went back to. It's weird, it's unique, so creative, and yet it's not making money. It's not productive, not commercially successful. The alternative is choosing the future, which the game suggests is choosing productivity, letting the town thrive. But what's the cost? Do you sell out or do you stick to your own vision? If my theory is close at all to correct, I understand Nikolai. I'm obsessive over my own work. I struggle trying to get tiny details right while feeling it's entirely pointless because it's all coming out terrible anyways. I suffer with it, but every so often I create something, and for a brief moment feel proud of what I've made, but also sad the struggle is over. And then it all starts again. Endless loops, the birth and death of an idea repeating itself over and over, which is a recurring theme in Pathologic. As one of the IPL workers put it, any work eats away at health. Our life is in any case finite. It is a supply of resources that will be used up in one way or another. We are only given to choose what. Personally, I find it difficult to imagine a better choice than a project that you really love and in which you really believe. I couldn't agree with that more. This is why failure, the plague, cannot be the antagonist, because failure comes and goes. Time is the only threat to achieving more. It's this difficult process of creating art that Pathologic is trying to get you to experience, specifically what Nikolai experiences. And the process can become so much more difficult when having to please an audience. It's easy to please an audience if you're not creating something unique. Just replicate what's already known to work, regurgitate successful ideas. On YouTube, that's reaction videos, whatever game is popular with the kids this week, and clickbait garbage. Nikolai knows how lazy anyone producing art can be, and likewise, how content general audiences can be with the same old slop just from a different spoon. He has said, you should never try to please someone else's audience. In the end, you will not please them, and you will change yourself. Nikolai has stuck to what he believes, and when asked, if your game was a food, what kind of dish would it be? He responded, pufferfish, probably. A dish considered a delicacy by some, but that can poison the consumer. This is what I'm taking away from Pathologic. It is my subjective view. It's a lesson in remaining fearless in front of failure, to have faith in our own work, regardless of what others think of it, and that inspires me. I'm making these no-budget YouTube videos. It's not like I have any consequences, but I sometimes worry they're too obscure, not conventional enough. When I notice channels with loads of success that really aren't doing anything unique, I lose confidence, seeing it as a reflection of my skill. To anyone experiencing these feelings, in whatever medium you express yourself in, it's a nice reminder that you're doing this for your own enjoyment. Because creating art is just like playing Pathologic. When you complete it, it's rewarding you with your own perseverance and satisfaction. This all might sound incredibly pretentious, and I admit it is, but the world could use more people really digging within themselves for unique work. To use Nikolai's own words, we have the capacity to do so much more. We should all stick to our own visions. I couldn't imagine spending my time any other way.